And we know it's perfectly possible. Tesla apparently knew how to use this giant negentropy process that's universal everywhere. Energy is free for the taking from the vacuum, anywhere you want it. We just have to learn to use that. Some of the breakthroughs in the past have been deliberately suppressed. I will name a few. T. Henry Moray was inspired, of course, by Tesla's work, and he demonstrated so many times to so many scientific and engineering groups and people who were skilled in the art. There is absolutely no question that T. Henry Moray had a system that produced about 50 kilowatts out of a 55-pound box. This is well established as you go back and look at all kind of certified tests and everything else that he did. There's all kinds of skullduggery that happened there. I don't think T. Henry Moray ever got a decent chance to ever do anything with that. The Russians even tried to kidnap him at one time. It reads like a James Bond movie, but it's real. It really happened, and it really happened here in the United States.
What year was that?
This was before the war. This was in the 1930s. In the same general period of time, one of the greatest electromagnetic fellows we ever had, scientist, was Gabriel Krohn. And Gabriel Krohn invented a true negative resistor working on a Navy contract for Stanford University. He was never permitted to reveal the exact way that he constructed his negative resistor. But I used direct quotes where he, in fact, said, we have a negative resistor and we can disconnect the generator from this network analyzer when we got negative resistors in there because they will power the circuit. So that one was, in fact, suppressed. I don't know whatever happened to it, but it vanished. And he never did reveal the secret of what he called his open path, connecting any 2 points in a circuit. But it is in the literature, and it's well documented because he was perhaps the leading electrical scientist in the United States at that time. Well, there's another one that went down the tube. Various and sundry people have made casual ones from time to time over the years. I'd estimate probably 50 different inventors have casually invented something. Even if they didn't understand it, they did get it to go over unity. We're never able to get anything done with it. Most of the time, they incurred a lot of enmity from the scientific community. Sometimes we're really hounded. And sometimes we're just very naive. Probably the best documented scientifically over unity systems, self-running, self-powering systems, were developed by the Russians before World War II. It's in the French scientific literature, and it's also in the Russian scientific literature. The papers are there. I quote them in many of the things that I published. And you can go check the papers. The theory is there. Many papers are published on this in the Russian scientific literature. They built what we call parametric oscillators. They have an oscillator going, and they change in the middle. They switch the actual inductance or capacitance or both of the things so that it becomes a self-oscillation device. And they reached, goodly power for those days, 50 and 100 kilowatt devices. There are many ways of looking at the suppression that's occurred in this area, and certainly I do not wish to talk about it myself, but I've been a victim of quite a bit of suppression. So has any other legitimate researcher in this area. All I can do is give you my ideas and drawn from my own experiences and what I think it is and where I think it's coming from. Today, we don't have so much big kingdoms. Today, we have big economic programs, big economic countries, or basically, we have cartels. We have a whole set of cartels in an area, interlocking corporations, and behind this, we have a few people who are quite wealthy and who own most things. Now, the normal nature of the beast for very powerful empires, let's call that an empire. It's a corporate empire, a set of corporations empire. It's basically a cartel. Historically, as far back as you want to go, we have had cartels. Any time we have a very powerful cartel or set of people that control a lot of things, that resists any means of changing its inflow of control and its inflow of funds and money and its power. Everybody's trying to be the big monkey. It's really as simple as that. And so the more powerful the agency, the more powerful the group, the more powerful the cartel, the more they will resort not only to legal means but to extra legal means to suppress their competition. You know, this is openly known today. For example, the greatest espionage in the world is industrial espionage between one corporation and another right here in America. They're the ones that hire all the spies and the spooky equipment and everything like that, by far more than the intel agents do. So that's one thing we have. We have the giant industrial, or really cartel, economic cartels in energy. And it's not one cartel. So there are many, many groups in energy, and each of those has become very powerful in its own area, and each one does not wish to see simple little electrical taps pulling out enormous energy from the vacuum. They would much rather see you burning a lot more oil and so forth. So yes, there's in my view, there is a very active suppression effort by those kinds of folks. Part of that goes into very unique areas. They don't do it so much. It's not totally mafia type stuff. It's not like, you know, you just flat get shot. There's some of that. But one of the main ways of suppressing it is they take a deep psychological profile of an individual that they wish to suppress. What it means is they really wish to get him entangled in all kinds of difficulties he can't get out of. Now, a good trait from a human being standpoint may be a very valuable trait to somebody who wishes to manipulate you. For example, suppose you're easy to approach. That's a vulnerability. That's a serious vulnerability. So one's deep psychological profile is examined in great depth by real experts. And any way that you can be gotten to where you're naive, you don't have who knows international finance? You can be had on a money laundering scheme easily and not even recognize that's what you're in. So any way that you do not have good knowledge, or you do not have ability, or you have a vulnerability, they call them vulnerabilities, then they arrange scenarios just like you would write a movie. In fact, they do it with computers. It's all computerized. And in this scenario, we write a play where this particular vulnerability is going to be exploited in the target. Now, they keep deep psychological profiles on lots of useful fellows. These are people who basically have knee-jerk reactions or something, or they're radical, or they have some kind of way they interact, which, if could be connected with you, would be in the area we wish the interaction to occur, to get you off into something else totally different from what you're doing. So the next thing you know, here, all it takes to set that up may be a phone call and stimulate the interaction to occur. And then the controllers sit back and watch the game go. It's gaming. But it's just like watching a movie scenario. One of these days, we'll probably write a book on gaming and how it's done and what kind of the main games they can use. But I can tell you they're very effective. You can get so many different games from so many different walks of life by so many charming folks who are really oily characters that you would not believe it. And those come at you en masse. And usually they bury you. They bury you off in the courts. They bury you off. They get you tricked into doing an illegal act. How would they do that if you wouldn't violate the law? Real simple. How can you be made to violate the law when you're not a criminal? Simple. Let me give you a for instance. A fellow comes in and he says, you know, we really need to get some real major financing. Every inventor's poor. Everybody's struggling. Nobody's got the money to build all these build-ups, which may cost $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a piece. So everybody's struggling for money. So he comes in and we're going to raise this. We're going to form a stock company. We're going to do all these good things. Unbeknownst to you, he goes off to the Securities Exchange Commission and several other people, Treasury Department, and he says, hey, I think I have fallen in with a den of thieves. Of course, he's the CEO now, understand? Of course, he's the guy who knows all this stuff. And tell you what I'll do, if you'll give me immunity to prosecution, I'll help you catch these crooks, because they're going to do the greatest money laundering thing you ever heard of. It's going to come right out of one of these foreign countries, it's going to be scrubbed and come in here to fund this effort. It's going to be laundered dope money or something like that. You have no knowledge this is happening. And they jump at the chance. They'll give him the immunity to prosecution. That's their normal modus operandi. They want to catch some crooks, and this guy's going to help them catch some crooks. So then he goes off and sets all this up and keeps you deluded about what's happening. And you wind up in where the thing is going to be consummated somewhere, and if you consummate it, you wind up behind bars for about 20 years wondering how you got there when you never did anything to money launder anything. He's the fellow who did it and who set it up, and he testifies against you because he's immune to prosecution. This is one of the standard games. Machiavelli is not dead. He still lives. And these are the games that are played, and it's particularly played in the systems where people are trying to build over-unity systems. It's been very effective in stopping some of them.
Do you think lethal force has been used?
Lethal force is used. I worked with an inventor, for example. Sparky Sweet is quite well known. And he was shot at once with a silenced rifle a sniper rifle from about 300 yards. The only thing that saved his life was he was an old guy and very feeble there towards that part of his life. And he was stumbling as he coming up the steps, and he fell down. He just flat fell down on the steps, caught his foot, and fell right forward. And as his head went forward, the bullet went right by where his head was. And, of course, the assassin was never found. So there are many cases like that. Some are killed. I believe Marinoff, I believe to be a kill. I don't believe Marinoff jumped off a building when he was excited on the way to talk about his invention and so forth. Gave no indications of it. If I can believe the reports of the people who visited where his body lay on the pavement glowed. And there's only one weapon on earth that will kill a human body and leave where it lies on the cement, let the cement glow under it. And that's a longitudinal wave shooter, what's called a shooter. So I believe, my personal belief, I can't prove this in a court of law, I don't intend to try, but my personal belief is that Marinoff was killed. He was probably killed by either the KGB or one of their agents from one of the other Iron Curtain countries, killed with a shooter, thrown off the building to make it look like suicide. The police probably knew about it. That's why they let the body lay so long before they moved it. They didn't want to tangle with the longitudinal waves from it. So yes, there are some rather bizarre things that have occurred to some people. As I say, I prefer not to dwell on that, try to get by as much of that as we can and try to dwell on the science. The only way we're ever going to beat all of this stuff, we have to convince the scientific community that there's real science here. Let me now review some of the implications of what I hope is just now emerging in these energy systems, where we take the energy from the vacuum, turn it into normal electromagnetic energy, and we catch it and use it to power our loads. First of all, every system we got out there has been doing this. We just didn't know it. We thought the generator powered the external circuit. It doesn't. It does not power it at all. All it does is we twist the crank on the generator, the shaft, to turn the shaft, and that forms a magnetic field inside the generator, and that energy in that magnetic field dissipates itself upon the internal charges to force the positive charges in one direction and negative charges in the other and make that dipole, and that's all the generator does. It doesn't add 1 watt to the power line. All the coal, all the oil, all the dams ever built, all the nuclear fuel rods ever consumed, never added 1 single watt to the power line. All they did was keep rebuilding the dipole that we have designed the silly circuit to destroy faster than we can power the loads. Not the way to run the railroad. So we have polluted the planet, we're killing species, we're poisoning our own lungs and our own environment. We don't have to do that. But it's a giant set of cartels, it's a giant financial set of empires, and it's going to continue this way unless we get the attention of the scientific community focused on it, and hopefully get some legislative action focused to force the action to develop these kinds of systems. Now, the implications once we develop them and start to use them, first of all, we don't have to have all this nuclear. Look how expensive and how long it takes to build a nuclear power plant. And then all the radioactive waste you have, they still store the fuel rods on the sites after they're spent. They don't know what to do with them. So you've got all kinds of schemes about where you're going to put them. The blunt truth of it, right now, we're storing them on site. It's a nuclear power plants.